What's going on, you guys? Clint here. Welcome back to the channel, Code Commerce. In this video, I'm going to be creating a Next.js 13 application using Firebase for a backend cloud storage Firebase database, and I'll also be styling everything with Tailwind CSS. So this is a quick view of what we're doing right here. As you can see, we have 3 items here, and we also have 3 items in our database. We can go ahead and add an item. Maybe we have an Uber to the movie. We'll say $25. You see it updates our database, and if we refresh, you'll see that the items still persist in our database. We can remove items, add items, and I'm going to show you how to do this from start to finish. Next.js 13, Firebase Tailwind. Let's get started. So here we are in VS Code. I'm already in the directory that I want to be in. What I'm going to do is just pop open my terminal here, and let's go ahead and create our Next.js application. So I'm going to type npx create-next-app, and I'm going to go ahead and install it inside of the current directory. So I'm not using TypeScript for this project, no linter. We do want Tailwind, don't need the source directory. We go ahead and use the app router. We're actually not going to be using routes in this project, just going to be a single page application. So go ahead and install Next.js. This should be quite quick. As you can see, it has already started. So let's start up our development server with npm run dev. And this is pretty quick, you guys. So right now, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead. This is going to be loading on 3001, okay, because my demo was on 3000. Go back to my demo here. So this should be what you see. This is the blank starter package, the boilerplate code when you create a Next.js application with Create Next App. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be working inside of this app folder here. So don't worry about the public, the node modules. We're just going to be inside of this app.js file, specifically inside of this page.js file. Okay. So what I want to do, if you're new to Tailwind, all this green styling, that's all Tailwind CSS. I think you're going to love it. So let's just leave that main element in that first div, and let's delete everything else inside of here. Tailwind is extremely fast to write. I love it. Super easy to pick up as well. Okay, so I'm going to add an H1 and say expense tracker, just like that. And we can go ahead and give that, I'm going to give it a class name. I'm going to say text for XL, and we'll say P4 for some padding there, okay? And then what you're going to see here, we actually have some media queries by default already applied. And let's just put this in the middle as well. We'll say text center. So as you can see, if we open this up, you see the media queries there. So what that is, let's go ahead and say, so for our padding, I want to say anything above the small breakpoint, which is 640 pixels. You'll see if we hover 640 pixels. We're going to add a padding of 24, which is 6 rem. Else we'll just say padding 4, which is 1 rem. So that looks good there. Also, you see this large flex here. Whenever we hit that large breakpoint, we can go ahead and get rid of that. We'll just get rid of that completely, and that should be good right there. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Looks good, you guys. So let's go ahead and add in some of our JSX here. Pull that down. So after the H1, we're going to have a div here and then a form with our inputs. So we'll have a div and then we'll have a form. We don't need an action. We can just submit it with our button. We'll have an input type of text here. Okay. And let's just go ahead and copy that down. We can get rid of the these ID and the button for the sake of this tutorial. We don't need that. We'll say placeholder. We'll say enter item. And for this one, we can just say amount. Actually, let's just do a $sign so it's a little bit smaller. There we go. And this one, we'll say this one is a number. Okay, then we also need a button and we need a submit there, type submit. And we'll just add a little plus symbol there so we can add things to our add things to our list here, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm going to style this just a little bit here. So for this div, this outer div, I'm going to give this a class name, okay? And I'm going to say BG Slate 800 P-4 for a little bit of padding. There we go. And I'm going to some rounded corners. So I'm going to say rounded large. You can do SM for small, medium, and that kind of plays with the border radius on your div there, okay? So for this form, let's give this a class name. And I want to display this as grid. We're going to have 6 columns. So I'm going to say grid columns 6, okay, and then I'll say items center, and I want text black, and then I'll define whatever I want white in there, okay. So as you can see, grid column 6. So each one of these is taking up one little column, as you see here. So inside here, we'll give some more class names in here. We'll say class name. I want to say column span, we'll say 3, we'll come back and edit some, P-3 and a border as well. So for the number, I actually only want that to be 2 instead of 3. That looks pretty good. And let's give, we'll say MX3 for a little bit of margin on the x-axis. There we go. And for this, let's say class name, and I'm gonna say text white. Okay, we'll see BG Slate 950. Now, whatever we hover, we can actually add a hover selector, pretty easy. We'll see BG Slate 900. There we go. And then we'll say padding 3 and text -XL to increase the size a little bit. So there you have it. I think that looks pretty good right there. You can see we do have that little hover effect whenever we hover over the button. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Next, we need to, so let's have some state. Let's add some state that we can actually map through, so, right? So I'm gonna say import React from React, and then let's import the useState hook, right? Okay, so we'll say useState, and also let's get the useEffect as well. So let's go ahead and save that. And we're getting an error here. So you're importing a component that needs useEffect. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents are marked with use client. So Next.js is saying that this is a server client. Whenever you create a new component, it's a server component by default, unless otherwise specified. So we can specify at the top, we'll just say use client. And now Next.js knows to serve this as a client component. So let's go ahead and add our state, okay? So our state is going to be, let's say const, you can call it whatever you want. I'm gonna say, we'll say items and set items equal to use state, okay? And it's gonna be an array of objects, so, okay? So we'll say name, we can have, we'll say coffee, this needs to be a string, coffee, and we'll say a price of, we'll say $4.95, and let's just copy this down a couple times. This one can be a, maybe a movie ticket, we'll say $24.95, and this one can be, we'll say candy, $7.95. And I left that lowercase on purpose, and I'll show you why here in just a minute. So that looks pretty good. We're also going to add these up. So let's go ahead and add a total here. We'll say const total and set total, just like that, equal to use state. And by default, we'll just set that to 0, because we're going to calculate that here at the bottom in a minute. So let's just scroll down a little bit, and we're going to put this underneath our form, right? Underneath our form, we're going to have an unordered list. This is where we're going to map through all our items there. So, okay. So we'll go right underneath the form, unordered list here, and then we're going to have our items, right? So we're mapping through our items. So items, and we'll say .map. And then for each item, we can assign a value. You can just say item and also an ID. And then we actually want to render out component on the screen. So we're going to use a parentheses there. And we're going to render out a list item and a div. The div is going to contain 2 spans. One's going to be an item. We'll say item.name. Let's copy that down. And this one's going to be item.price. So you can start seeing stuff on the screen. Perfect. Let's add a little $sign for our price there. And then we're going to have a button for each one as well. And we'll just put an X in there that we know that this button's going to delete that item. So for this list item, we're not going to style the unordered list, but for the list item, we need to give it a key. Otherwise, you'll be getting an error. So we'll say item.id, just like that. And or you could just say ID like that. Let's leave it like that. So key equals ID. Give it a class name. We'll say margin Y of 4. So that's margin on the top and bottom. Give it some spacing. We'll say width full. I'm going to display flex and then justify between, just like that. Perfect. Now for this div, we're going to give some padding here. Okay. Where's our spacing at? There it goes. So for this div, let's give it a class name, and we're going to say P-4, a little bit of padding, width full, flex, justify between. There we go. That looks even better. So for our name, like I said, we left this lowercase, and this is just for strictly a user experience type of thing. So we'll say class name, just in case there's some lowercase data in there, we can just say capitalize is the class name for Tailwind. So text transform capitalize. That way everything is consistent throughout our application. So next, let's style our button here. So for our button, let's say margin Y. Let's see, for our button here, we'll say class name. And each button, we're going to say margin left of 8, padding 4, border left 2, border slate 900. Then I'll add a hover selector. Hover, we want to change the background to slate 900. And then let's say width of 16. And let's see how that looks. We'll give it a save. Looking kind of funky there. So margin left, border slate, hover, our background. So we don't actually have a background on this. So let's add this right here. We'll say BG slate 950. There we go. So now if we hover, as you can see, whenever we hover on the X, get that nice hover selector or hover effect, right? So next, what we want to do is just have our total down here at the bottom, kind of add up all of our total there, okay? So let's just do that underneath our unordered list here. So we have our state here, total by default set to 0, and we'll just grab that default setting for now. So what we're going to say, we'll open up some curly brackets so we can actually just render this dynamically, because if there are no items on our list, then I actually don't want it to display anything at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back in here like that. Okay. So, and then we just show it if an item is rendered. So, or if an item is in our database. So we can do that dynamically with our curly brackets. What we'll say, if items.length, okay, you can word this however you want. I'm gonna say if it's less than 1, then we're not gonna display anything. Okay. Or then we'll display something else. So we have to put something in there. So I'll just put an empty string. So if it's less than 1, we're just going to have an empty string in there. Else, we're going to display something else, which is going to be a div with a span total. I'll copy that down. And this will actually be the total. And the total is total, just like that, which is our state here from above, which is actually set to 0. If we change that to 5, it'll change to 5, so on and so forth. But we'll make this dynamic here in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and we'll give this class name. Let's hit this as flex, justify between P3, just like that, and go ahead and save. So cool, that looks good. All the styling is done, all the JSX is done. Next, what we want to do is let's go ahead and install Firebase and get to the fun part. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll go to firebase.google.com, and I'm going to go ahead and close down my other server there. We'll close this one down. So firebase.google.com, click on get started. Okay, this is completely free. I already have my test in here to show you guys. So I'm going to create a new project, and I'm just going to call this expense tracker, just like that. Let's go ahead and hit continue. It's asking, I'll open this up a little bit, fire analytics, all this, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to do that for this project, just to make it a little bit more messy and cumbersome. We don't need that for the sake of this tutorial. So as you can see, provisioning our backend service here looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and close this server down. We're going to install Firebase here shortly. Guys, smash the like button if you feel like you're getting some value out of that. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. And let me know if you want to see any type of content you want to see. So there we go. It's ready. Let's go ahead and continue. So this is Firebase. This is kind of the landing page you're going to get to. All sorts of things you can do with Firebase. You can do databases, there's cloud storage, there's real time, there is authentication, which I have some videos on. And this project, let's go ahead and we're going to set up the cloud Firestore, right? Cloud storage, a database. So for iOS apps, Android, we're going to do web. Okay. So I'm going to call this, we can call it our expense tracker app, like that. You can set up some Firebase hosting is another thing. Again, not in this tutorial. I do have some other tutorials based on that. Cool. So let's go ahead and install Firebase. Firebase is very intuitive for developers, very easy to use. Where'd it go? Oh no. All right, so it just went somewhere. First, what it wants us to do is install Firebase. So let's go ahead and close our server, install Firebase. Cool. So getting started, first I have to go back and find that screen wherever it was. Where's my console? That was a pain how it just like disappeared. All right, give me just a minute here. Where are we at? Expense tracker, Firestore database, project overview. It's in here. All right, integrations. Where is it at? Users and permissions, service accounts. I don't know why it just like crashed and didn't show me everything. All right. So here it is. In case you're trying to follow along here, we're going to come down project overview, project settings, coming down here. So we just installed Firebase. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this over. And what this is for, I'll shrink this back down. Damn you for disappearing. So, okay, so we installed Firebase, right? We just installed Firebase and we can see it inside of our package.json there. Cool. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to put this inside of our app here. We'll say firebase.js. Now, you could put it in your app.js. However, I don't recommend. You'd likely want to hide this if you're pushing it to production, right? And by the way, you guys, these two keys they are unique to my Firebase account. I'm going to put this up on GitHub after this. However, if you clone it, it's not going to work because I'm going to change these keys. So make sure you sign up for yourself, your own account. It's free. So, yeah, make sure you sign up yourself, okay? So once you just copy that over into another file, firebase.js, cool, that's what we need to do. Let's go back in here to Firestore database. We can go ahead and create, let's see, how do I get started? Let's scroll down. Like I said, very intuitive, very easy to use. What we need to do is install Firebase. Well, we already did that. So next we just need to install or import the Firestore SDKs, right? So we're just going to select this one in here and I'm going to paste it right here. It actually tells us add SDKs for Firebase products you want to use. It gives us a list of the available libraries. I'm going to import that. Now, since we're not in our app, our page.js, we need to export it so we can use it throughout our app. So I'm going to say export const. We can say db equal to get Firestore. I think it's lowercase. We'll just pass in app just like that. Okay. So that should be all we need to do. Okay. So now we have Firebase installed and configured there. So we can go ahead and come back over here. Whoops. Come back over here. Let's shrink that back down. So what we want to do, let's be able to, or let's look at, let's see, initializing, let's add some data to our database, right? So let's go ahead and I'm going to close this. So I'm going to show you how we can do this programmatically. You could create a database or you can just do it how we are going to do it, which is we're doing right now. So import collection and add doc. These are two Firebase functions we're going to need to use. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in there like so. Perfect. Now let's come down here and we need to do a few things here. Okay. Right. So we want to, let's make some notes. We want to add, we'll say add item to database. We're going to want to read items from database and we're going to want to delete items from database. Cool, right? So those are like the three kind of functionalities, core functionalities that we want to do. So let's go ahead and create our first one, our first function here. So I'm going to say const, I'm going to call it add item, pretty intuitive here. Let's make this, we'll make this an asynchronous function, right? So we'll say async, just like that here. And passing in an event, and we don't want the form to actually be submit. So we're going to say e.prevent default, just like that. Cool. Now we need to add some values. Okay. So for right now, these don't have any values associated with them. So let's go ahead and add some values here. So where are they at? Here's our input, right? So let's go ahead and say value equal to, and we actually need to add some state for this here. So let's add our state first. So we already have our array of items in there, right? Or of objects. We already have our total, and our other state we're going to need to manage is actually what's in the inputs here. Okay, so we'll just add that right here. We'll say const, we'll say new item, and we need to set a new item just like that, equal to use state. Okay, and what we have the name, which by default will just be an empty string here, and also we're going to have the price, which by default will just leave blank. Okay. So looking good there. I'm gonna go ahead and start this back up. So that is running. Looks good there, perfect. Now, next, let's go back down and assign our values to our inputs there. Okay. So for this value, we're going to say new item dot name. And for this price, we'll say value equals new item dot price, just like that. And we want to have an on change, right? So whenever this changes, we want to record that for whenever we get ready to submit it. Okay. So what we'll say here, we'll just add this here on change, just like that. Okay. And we'll send an event, and we'll say set new item. So our new item state here, we're going to set this in here. So that's going to be set to, we'll use a spread operator. We'll say new item. Then this one is going to be name equal to event.target.value. And we're going to do the same exact thing here, but instead it's going to be for the price. So we'll say on change equal to, we'll say event, and we'll say set new item, and it'd be price e.target.value. Cool. So let's go ahead and save that. And for our button, we want to be able to submit this and actually run our function that we created, our add item. So we'll just say, we can say on click. You could also do on submit, but we'll say on click. We're going to run this function, the add item function. Okay. So right now our function doesn't do anything. It's just preventing the default. So it's actually not going to load. So if you click, oh, that was on the demo here. So let's go 3000. Get our demo back. So right now our function's not going to do anything. It's just going to prevent the form from actually submitting. Okay. So if nothing happens, we can just click it. So let's go ahead and add an item, right? So what we're going to do here, first we want to check if this would be a poor user experience if you try and add a blank input and it adds a blank string or a blank amount into your database. That would be a poor experience. So how do we prevent that? We'll just write an if statement, very simple. If new item dot, we'll say check the name first, is not equal to an empty string, and the new item dot price not equal is not blank, and then we'll go ahead and we'll proceed. Okay. And what we're going to say is, let's just set items. We'll use a spread items, new item. Okay. And let's see. We also, so there we have it. We just added an item. Now this actually is not going to our database yet. It's just, we're adding it to our state, right? So again, just to show you, we could say, we'll add our Uber back for, we'll say $30. It gets added into our state, but we're not actually pushing to the database yet. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So this is kind of how that works. We can go ahead and comment that out. And what we'll say is we want to await. And just to show you, it's going to be add doc, but this is some Firebase. Here we go. So we already imported add doc when we brought that in. And this is actually how we add the doc. So we're going to run this await add doc collection. So what we'll say is await, and we'll say add doc. And then it's going to be, add doc. It's going to be collection. And then our database, we say DB, just like that there. And then our database, we don't actually have it named yet. This is saying users. You can actually name it whatever you want. It won't matter right now if you have not yet created your database. However, if you've already created a database, it could matter. So we'll just say items. What that's going to do is just create a new table for us by the name of items, right? And then what we'll say here, there we go. Then what we'll say next is we actually have to have our data that we're putting in there, which is the name. And we'll say new item dot name, and let's just go ahead and say dot trim. So it just takes away any of the if we add some space before or after. Then we're going to have our price, and we'll say new item dot price. And let's go ahead and save. So now we should actually be able to, well, actually we have to create our database first. So let's go ahead and hit create database. And just so you saw, this is in Firebase. If I open this up for you guys, here we go. So Firestore database is what we want. You can click build, Firestore database. We want to create the database, and we're going to start in, we'll just say test mode for now. Just go ahead and have it set up in the location that it recommends. This will probably be your best. It's provisioning Firestore, Cloud Firestore. I'll shrink this back down. So now we should actually be able to, there we have it. So let's go ahead and try and add something in here, okay? See if we can add something. What we're going to say, let's say Uber, and we'll say 15 bucks. I think just hit enter, and let's see, let's give it a refresh. This should actually, there you go, actually hit it twice. Again, let's open this up a little bit. Actually hit it twice, and now it created 2 documents. And so this is a collection. A collection is like like it says, like collection of items. Then each item can have multiple documents. So this items is actually an array and has multiple items in here. And I just hit it twice. And I'm going to go ahead and delete one. And you know, something I just noticed, I actually just entered 2 things into our database, and our inputs are still populated, and that's just kind of like a poor user experience. So let's go back and we'll set that right here. After this add doc, we'll set new item back to name will be an empty string, and we'll do the same for our price. Okay. So let's go ahead and save this again. We'll hit a refresh. Right now we just have this one document, which is Uber. Okay, and let's add we'll add dessert. How much is dessert? We'll say 19 bucks. Go ahead and enter. There you go. That looks a lot better. And we can see there's our Uber, and where's our other one? Go back to items, dessert. There you have it. So that looks pretty good. Now, we're just reading from our state, though, in our local state inside our application. We actually want to read this directly from our database and not our state at all, actually, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete this, or sorry, I'll just comment it out for now. And there you have it. Our amount disappeared as well. So we have our add items to database. Next, we want to actually read the items from our database. And we're going to wrap this in a use effect. So make sure you have use effect imported here at the top. And what we'll say here, we'll say use effect, just like that. It's going to be an arrow function. And what we're going to say, pass in a dependency array here, so it only runs once. And so we're going to say a couple things here. Whoops. And we're going to need to import a few things as well. So if we check out the docs, that's add data, and if we scroll down, read data, there we go. So collection and get docs. We don't necessarily have to import this on separate lines. So we already have collection there. We have add doc. We're going to need get doc. We're also going to need this query snapshot. What else are we going to need? Let's see. What else are we going to need? Let's see how that works. I'm sure we're missing some stuff and going to have to add in some new things here. Okay. So inside our use effect, right, we're going to have, we'll say const, just to make things a little bit easier, we'll say const q equal to query. So we're going to probably have to import query. We want the collection in our database. We'll say, our collection here to be, our collection is going to be DB items, and that's what we named our database here. That's our collection here, items. So hopefully that makes sense. Items, and then what we'll say is we'll say const unsubscribe, just like that, on snapshot. This is something we're going to need to bring in, I know for sure. We'll say q query snapshot. We'll need that one. And then inside here, we want to actually, so the way Firebase works, whenever we're reading from the database and we push things in the database, we're going to actually store it in like a temporary array, right? So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say items array, just like that. And we're just initialize just an empty array there. And we'll say query the snapshot, which is just like a picture of your database here. Then for each doc, okay, for each doc, what we'll say is items.array, items array dot push, and we're pushing this into we're taking a picture essentially of our database, of our collection, and pushing it into our items array here, right? Our little array that we initialized. And what we'll say is, open these up, we'll say doc dot data, just like that. Okay. And then we'll say ID equals to doc.id. And then we want to set our items here to the items array, okay? And our items here up here at the top, right? And we're setting it with our items array there. So let's see here, query, we need to bring in query. We have query snapshot, we need query. Let's see what else we might need. It should tell us on snapshot. So let's bring this one in. These are all Firebase functions here. On snapshot, is there any more? That might be it. Items array, items array, cool. Reference. Why is that lowercase? I didn't make that lowercase. Cool. Okay, so that looks good. Items array. And let's go ahead and let's see. One error. Items array is not defined. Oh, there we go. You guys probably saw that too. Making fun of me in the comments. It's all good. Okay. So cool. There. Oh, look at that. So it actually pulled straight from our database here. So dessert, Uber, dessert. I'm gonna open this up a little bit. I hate that view there. Dessert, Uber. Let's say we'll say movie, $35. Boom. There is our dessert movie. There you have it. Nice. We still want to calculate our total, which right now it's not calculating the total. That's fine. We'll go ahead and add that in there. I'm going to shrink this back down. So we have our items array. So next, let's go ahead and we're going to add some space here. We'll say read total from database. Okay. Or it's actually not even reading from the database. It's from this items array. So we'll just say read total from items array. Okay, so it's not actually pulling this, calculating based off of the database. So what it's doing, it's pushing, it pulls our database and pushes all the data into this items array here that we initialized, and we're just calculating the items array. Okay, so we're not actually doing any extra work on the database. So what we'll say is const, we'll say, we're gonna call this calculate total, just like that. And we don't need to pass anything in here. And inside here, we'll say const total price equal to items array dot reduce. And then inside here, we'll say sum and an item there. And we'll say sum plus parse float and the item dot price 0. And then we want to set our total here, which is our state up here at the top. Right now it's 0. So we just want to update that, and we'll set that to our total price here. Okay, this function that we're running. Okay, and we need to call this. So we'll say calculate total. There we go, and we'll need to return unsubscribe. This is for Firebase. Let's go ahead and save. Let's refresh. And there you have it. We'll close that down. Look at that, you guys. Looking pretty good. So look at that. We can add an item. We'll add, maybe bought a car for $5,000. We'll say $5,000. There you have it. Looks pretty good. Look at our total there. Nice. It's in our database. I hate this view. I'm going to go back to items. I don't know where our car is. It's somewhere in there. You can see for items. There they are. Calculating our total. However, we want to be able to actually delete. We want to actually be able to delete an item. It's now we can't do that. We can go in here and see this movie, for example. We can delete this movie document here. And now the movie's gone. But we want to do this programmatically in our application, of course, right? So what we'll say here, we'll say we're going to need to pass through an ID on our button here. So where's our button? That's for our add. And here's for our delete. So let's go ahead and say on click, right? On click, we're going to run a function and we can just say delete. Delete item. This is actually going to be an arrow function here. So what we'll say here, let's say delete. Dang, dude. delete item, and we'll pass in the item.id that we're getting here. So we're actually deleting the specific, we're passing through the specific ID on Firebase for this item, because we don't, otherwise that's how we're targeting this specific item in the collection. Okay, so delete item. So let's come up here and we'll create our function here for delete item. So what we're going to say is, we'll say const delete, why do I keep putting an I there, dude? We'll say async, passing in the ID, passing in the ID here, going to be an arrow function again. And what we'll say is await delete doc, which that delete doc is actually a Firebase function. And it's going to be doc, let's see, delete doc, delete. It's down here somewhere. Delete, where's delete? Read data, add data. Manage data, delete data. It's going to be in here. I know it. We'll shrink that back down. So we need to import delete doc. We'll just say delete doc. There it goes. So await delete doc. Where are we at? Delete document, right? So we'll say doc, and then here we're going to say DB. Our database is items, right? That's what we called it, items. And then we just want to pass in the ID. Okay. So let's go ahead and save 3 items in there. We'll remove the car, getting an error. What is our error? Doc is not defined. Oh, we probably just need to import doc like that. We'll hit a refresh. And let's find, so we have our car in here, dessert. Car for 5,000. Let's delete it. And there you go. Let's see if it deleted. Make sure it deleted. There you have it. So there you have it. Let's give it one more test. Maybe we got some snacks of the movie, 18 bucks. Bought another car for 10K, 100K. There you go. We have all of our items in here, and we can actually add the items to our database, read items from our database, and delete items from our database. Nextjs 13, Firebase, Tailwind CSS. Smash the like button, you guys, if you feel like got some value out of this. I much appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.